Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Doctor Lawyer Breakdown, a show with a unique perspective on everything from the mundane to the arcane. My name is Bradford Cady. I'm your host, and I am joined again today by Dr. Joseph Ramos. Dr. Ramos, how are you?
Thank you. Great. Good to be with you again today, Bradford. Looking forward to this. First episode was fun.
I had a blast. I'm so excited that we get to come back and do another episode.
Me too.
We're going to pick up where we left off. We covered the origin story in our last show, and the last thing we wrapped up with was a little interactive trivia question. Okay, so if I remember right.
That's right.
Yes. So dream car from when you were 19 years old. We talked about where you grew up, the town in Nevada that was, it's funny, I can actually remember the distance better than the name. 176 miles. Is it Austin, Nevada?
Yes, Austin, Nevada.
Okay, so you grow up in Austin, Nevada. You know, you're getting ready to be done with high school. You're inspired by these jets flying through the canyon. What's your dream car? I guessed the red Corvette. We had a couple other guesses, but I think that the red Corvette ended up being the audience's favorite answer. Okay, but what's the real answer here?
The first choice was Chevy truck. Second choice was 69 Camaro. I think 70 Chevy truck, short box, 69 Camaro, and 79 or 80 Corvette. You guessed Corvette, as did most of the audience. But you're wrong.
Oh, no. Okay, tell me more.
The dream car was a 69 Chevy Camaro.
Okay.
The muscle car of the era. And I actually had one and got it the first year I went away to college. Saved up all my money from pumping gas. And well, actually, not for sure when I went away to college. My senior year of high school. Saved up all my money from pumping gas. Bought this car. It was my dream car. I never thought I would get another car. I couldn't believe how blessed I was to have a 69 Chevy Camaro.
That thing, I bet, was sweet.
Sweet, so sweet. Unfortunately, later in life, I got broke and had to sell it.
Yeah.
I wish I had it today.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, it's not a lot. It's not often, 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid, you get the car that you dreamed of.
I saved up every single penny.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's I think, a great lead into the kind of continuation for episode 2, right? We talked about the origins, but now I want to talk about the education. From this point, you're going to head off to college. Now, we had talked about your inspiration with these fighter pilots flying through the canyon, breaking windows, thankfully paying for them.
Yes.
When you decided that you wanted to be Top Gun style fighter pilot, what did you do? Like, we talked about how you were in the library all the time and that you're constantly looking for more info. I mean, there's no internet. How did you apply? What's the process here? Once you have that spark, what do you do?
Yeah, it's so amazing how things have changed, right? I mean, I think about this today, and I'm like, today you'd Google it and you'd pull it up and you'd do a search and you'd probably pull in your applications and all of your paperwork. And instead, because I knew that these were military jet fighter pilots, I just reached out to military recruiters.
Did you just call them on the phone?
Yeah, call them on the phone. Dial phone back then. Dial phone that was connected to the cord. You had a cord literally that would connect the phone to the wall. She could only stretch as far as the cord. And they would mail stuff out, snail mail, out to our little bitty town. And it would be a packet about what you do and so on and so forth. And I learned through that process of both reading books and calling up recruiters and getting packages mailed out to me that most branches of the military have a fighter jet program, from the Navy to the Air Force, to, the whole 9 yards, Marines probably. And I made a selection. I wanted to go into the United States Air Force. So I went instead of going to the Air Force and enlisting, I decided to apply to the Air Force Academy because I wanted to be an officer, because it would increase my odds of then being a fighter pilot.
Gotcha.
And so the Academy became where I set my sights.
So what's that day like? Right? Like, does the trailer have a mailbox? Like, I can't imagine the anticipation of, the U.S. Air Force Academy logo on that piece of paper that shows up as correspondence. Like, walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, so exciting to get that stuff in. So, here's the funny thing about a small town. So yes, we had a post office, but very small, maybe 80 P.O. boxes in it.
That's not very many.
My parents were P.O. Box 2.
So they've been there for a minute. Oh, man.
P.O. Box 2. And it was funny. We would pull up outside. You run in. Ronnie Gandolfo was the postmaster back then. I still remember Ronnie. dearly. And hey, Ronnie, can you get the mail? Because our box was up a little high. When I was little, I couldn't quite get to it. So run to the front counter, he'd hand me the mail, out of the box type of a thing. And as I got older, of course, by the time I applied to the Air Force, I could reach it. And I could get the mail myself. But if something didn't fit in the little bitty box, like a big envelope from the Air Force Academy.
Ronnie had it.
Ronnie was the man.
That's awesome.
Yes, we got mail out there, and it was very exciting. I want to tell you something that's interesting about this, though, as we go into the Air Force Academy story. It was a big deal in our town.
I believe it.
Because
there's only 180 people there.
Yeah, and they were like, again, it was like all your parents being proud of you.
Yeah.
You're going to go, when I finally got accepted, you're going to go to the academy, they just thought that was, because they knew it was the West Point of the Air Force.
Right.
Essentially. And so anyway.
So then talk to me about that send off, right? You get accepted, you're over the moon excited, yes. Right? That's gotta be a huge culture shock going from, less than 250 people, or maybe it's a little more than that, to, there's 250 people in your class probably.
Yeah, huge culture shock, the transition to the Air Force Academy. Even getting in was a culture shock because I remember what would happen is for me to go to interviews, you have to get a congressional nomination and appointment. First, you have to do very well on testing, which I did. Then you have to pass a physical exam, which I did. To do that, to pass physical exam, we had to literally drive, to Reno.
Okay.
That's where they administered the physical examination for people for the military.
So it's like 2.5 hours up there.
Exactly. Okay. 2.5 hours one way to take a physical exam. And then when you apply, you have to get this congressional nomination appointment. You walk into these rooms where there's a table full of people that some congressman has put there to select who he's going to nominate, because he only nominates so many people.
Interesting.
And you do these interviews. And I remember that being a culture shock, just walking into a room in the big city and seeing all these people around a table in shirts and ties, which I didn't have.
Right.
And trying to get into the academy, that was, I don't know. To this day, I was just myself and just kind of winged it. And I think they probably thought, man, if anybody who's brave enough to walk in here without a shirt and tie on, we probably better give him a nomination. I don't know.
Well, I was gonna ask you about that. Like, what's that? If you don't know, there's no way to prepare for that, right? And even if you read about it, there's still no way to prepare for the feeling of standing in front of a bunch of suits and having to, like you're saying, tell them why you're the right choice. Right. And if you don't have any preparation for that, like, do you remember walking out of that thinking to yourself, oh, I got it? Or were you like, dude, there's no way I'm going to make it in?
You want to know what so looking back, I remember really one thing sticks out in my mind, other than the initial impression of walking in the room. The other thing that sticks out in my mind, there were several times during my various interviews that people broke out laughing. And I didn't know if it was because I had something so dumb that they were laughing at me, or if I had said something that they really thought was funny.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit unsettling because I didn't know if I had done well or not. But the one thing I did do is I just went in and was just myself. They said, what do you like doing? I, talked about, hunting and gutting a deer. And nowadays that might not be, so kosher with everybody as far as, what to do. But I was just myself. And I think they found that real. And I think they said, hey, this is somebody we like to have in our military.
And I think that when you can connect with, who you are and what you really want, I think that people can see the passion, right? When you're, 18, 19, how old were you? 18?
Well, I graduated high school actually when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
And so when I went away to the academy, I turned 18 there like 4 months later.
Okay, so 17-year-old kid that's going to stand up in front of all these suits, that's just going to tell them what it is, that wants to fly an airplane. I'm sure they saw that.
They saw it. They saw that I wanted to fly, and I wanted to fly bad. I wanted to fly an airplane. And there is no doubt, again, this is looking back, that the passion they felt was probably pouring out of every pore.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. Okay, so now how did you transition that passion into your studies at college? So you're at the Air Force Academy, big culture shift. What's that look like now in your first couple semesters at the academy?
So this leads to probably the first big feeling of failure in my life. I leave this little bitty town. I go to the Air Force Academy where when I graduated, they have an officer come out and present this stuff, and the whole town is just like,
That's awesome.
Whatever. And I go away, and I loved the academy at first. The academy is very physical. There's a lot of hazing back in those days that happened. I love that. I love kind of that sparring. I'm also competitive. I love that. I loved finishing up. When I went into it was so difficult. It's essentially an officer's training school. It was so difficult back then with the hazing and the time and what they did to you that I think it was maybe 700 of us started. I think 450 of us finished.
Wow.
But what happened, this is where things started to go south for me. I really loved the academy. I loved everything I was learning. I loved the discipline. I loved being there. But they had told me right before I went that I couldn't be a fighter pilot without waivers. I had 2,300 vision in each eye, and I take allergy medicine every day. To this day, I'm always a little bit nasally. Little things trigger my allergies.
Okay.
So they said, you can probably be like a bomber pilot. We might be able to get waivers to be a fighter pilot. And just the excitement of being there, I was like, I'll take it. I'll go.
Yeah.
Once I got there, and after the people had dropped out that were dropping out, the rest of us were pushing forward. Everybody's a good student. Everybody gets good grades. Everybody's got their act together. And here's the part I didn't think about. Everybody wants to be a fighter pilot.
There's a lot of you in that class.
Yeah, and there's not 450 fighter pilot spots. And they don't need to make an exception for the guy with 2,300 vision, the guy that takes an allergy medicine every day. And there became this disappointment that began to set in where I realized the reality was I wasn't going to get to do what I wanted to do. They had enough perfect people,
right,
without waivers.
Well, perfect meaning without waivers, right? Yeah,
that were
20/20 vision,
yes,
no allergy meds, which really, and I think that's nuts even to this day. That they can say, oh, you take allergy meds, you cut, you're done.
Yeah,
wow.
And I've since had my vision corrected. It's 2015 in one eye and 20/20 in the other, and I fly my own airplane now at 30,000 feet, which we'll talk about at some episode. And so clearly, I'm capable of flying, but not in the military. I wasn't capable of being a jet fighter pilot, and my entire life I had never done anything to be second best.
Yep. So talk to me about, as a young man, that accepting those feelings. I think that that is a example of a point of maturity that I think a lot of us get in those early stages in life. How did you work through that because I can't even imagine sitting in that town, watching those airplanes go by, working so hard to get there. And then, thinking I'm going to make it happen for myself. And then getting there and being told, sorry, the rules say the answer's no, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like talk to me about processing that as a young man.
Yeah, that's a great question, Bradford. So the first processing aspect of that happened to me was understanding that I wasn't going to get to do what I wanted to do. What I had done throughout my whole life is I wanted something, I just worked harder for it. I loved to play basketball, and I worked harder and I worked harder and I worked harder until I was an all-state basketball player. And then I worked harder and harder because they picked one player to be player of the year in the league. And I got that my senior year.
Oh, wow.
And I did that just because I was willing to put in the work and time. I'd go to the gym and shoot. Getting competitive. And I enjoyed it, right? It was the first time I realized you can't outwork this. That was some processing. And it was a real feeling of failure when I went back to my town and all those same people that were so proud of me and gave me that wonderful send-off. And I was the pat on the back pride of those people, then saw me pumping gas in a gas station.
So you left the academy.
I did.
So did you complete some kind of an education? Did you get were you just like, as soon as you realized that it was not an option, you're like, well, if I can't outwork this, then I got to just make a shift?
Yeah. So in the academy, that's a great question. Back in those days, this has changed just slightly now, but not much. Anytime during the first year that you left, you owed them nothing. That education was free. That time was free. It was we're glad to have you. Good luck.
Okay.
If you stayed anything past the first year, you owed the Air Force, the military, 2 years for every year. So if you stayed a year, you could leave for free. If you stayed a year and a day, you owed them 4 years. 2 years for the year, 2 years for the day. If you stayed the whole 4 years, you did your 4, then you owed them 8 more.
And so those years you say that you're owing is years of service in the military.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
So I left during the first year, so I owed no time.
I see.
And that was good. If I wasn't going to get to do what I wanted to do,
I
wanted to get on a course where I could get good doing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Problem was I didn't know what.
So you're back pumping gas in Austin, Nevada, filling up well, I was almost going to say unleaded, but it might have been leaded back in
There were
those days,
those
right?
regular and unleaded.
Was it leaded gas?
Regular, unleaded, and Supremium.
Oh my gosh. So you're pumping gas. Like where do you come across this desire to start to think about medicine again? Right. We talked in the last episode about your sister. I know it's a J name, but it's the sister. It's
Jody.
Jody. Okay. Sister trips and falls, cuts her leg open, and you're like, oh, no problem. I can handle this. Where do you rediscover that medicine, the drive for medicine?
So I didn't at first. What happened was, so I have a dad who's probably best described as a hard ass. He's not super loving of a guy. And I remember him asking me when I got back and I'm pumping gas, because I obviously went back, started pumping gas, started living at home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I had even been there a week or two. And he said, so what you gonna do? I said, man, I don't know, Dad. I really don't know what I'm doing. He said, well, I know you're not gonna be living here.
Oh boy, what a line. There's one thing I can tell you. So
you better
you're not living here.
Yes, you better decide.
Oh man.
So I was like, wow, what am I gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the sign that I had been pushed out of the nest, and I better go find my own nest. And so I called up a cousin who was going to college, and I said, hey, man, you need a roommate? He's like, well, not really, but sure. And away I went.
Not a bad answer.
Took off and went there and enrolled in college and started tutoring classes.
So hold on. There's a lot of things in that little sentence there. Okay, so you go to where? So to live with your cousin.
Yeah. So my cousin lived in Sacramento.
Okay.
And I went to Sacramento City College.
Okay.
City College, because they just admit anybody.
Sure.
And I had great grades and all that stuff and great test scores and stuff, but they would take anybody. And really what I was doing was just running to get somewhere where there was a place to live and school to go to with really no other goal.
Okay. Yeah, because if you can just be near somewhere with some knowledge and have somewhere to live, Dad says you can't stay in the spare bedroom anymore.
That's right.
You got to go somewhere.
Yeah, there was no spare bedroom.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a trailer.
There were people piled in rooms.
Oh man. Okay. All right. So you're in Sacramento, California. How old are you at this point?
So I would have been 18, 19 probably.
Okay.
Maybe 19 now because that turned 18 at the Air Force Academy. So between 18 and 19.
Okay. So we're over this. We're processing this feeling of failure. We're moving to California with the cousin. We're just going to be near the college, and you enroll just so you can just like give me something to learn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was there because of course I was, working the entire time because I was, I didn't get money from my parents. I didn't have a scholarship or anything of that sort. I was taking jobs, and I had gotten a job in a dental hygienist clinic. I thought, well, maybe I'll be a dentist.
Sure.
A good friend of ours was a dentist, seemed happy. That was all the reasoning I needed at that age.
Right.
So I went to this dental hygienist clinic, and I absolutely hated it.
Huh.
I like to talk to people.
Can't do that when you got the instruments in their mouth.
I'm happy, and I like happy people. Nobody's happy to be there. You're very close in people's personal space. You're breathing in their face, and they're breathing in yours. There was not a single thing I liked about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And so fortunately, that's where work experiences led me on to medicine, because the job I took after that was a volunteer job in the Department of Surgery and Recovery, where I was wheeling people back and forth from an operating room to the recovery room.
Okay, so this is at a local hospital in Sacramento?
Well, that actually was when I transitioned over to Reno. The Sacramento part was the dental hygienist part. And so I had just done that and realized I wasn't going to do what I wanted to do. At this time, that was I just finished my associate's degree. It went pretty fast.
Okay.
And I had an opportunity because I got one of the biggest breaks of my life. I had some family friends that knew us. Robbie knew a guy. It's always who knows a guy.
Oh, yeah.
Named Mike, who was the head of scholarships at the University of Nevada, Reno. I had missed the deadline. I'm over in California. Yeah. I'd missed the deadline. He knew I was coming back and forth and seeing my family all the time. He knew I didn't have money. He knew I was working. And he called up Mike at the University of Nevada, Reno. I'll never forget it, because this is where breaks in life just, man, it means so much. I'll never forget him. He called him up and he said, you got to get this kid in the University of Nevada, Reno. But and I think Mike was probably like, well, does he have the grades? Yeah, he's got that. He's got some other problems though. He doesn't have the money and he's missed your deadline. Oof. And Mike called me in on a Saturday. I drove over from Sacramento. College in Reno started like the month later. I had long missed the deadlines. Yeah. And he interviewed me and he said, we've got some extra scholarship money. welcome to the University of Nevada, Reno.
Wow.
Do you believe that break?
That is wild.
And I literally went over there and started college on a whim because I didn't know what else to do in Sacramento, and I had this chance to go to Reno. I'm back in Nevada where my family is, and now there was a financial resource.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I never lost my scholarships.
So when you enrolled at the University of Reno, did you like pick a major right there and you're like, well, I don't know, throw dart at the dartboard, or did you draw on something? Like, you got this incredible opportunity, and you're right, it is a big break, but those are the sorts of breaks you got to make sure that you're capitalizing on.
Yeah, and you're right. And what had happened was I had started in Sacramento really pursuing the sciences because of the dentist thing. What I had to do to be a dentist.
Okay.
And I realized all of a sudden, oh no, now I've got all these sciences. What am I going to do? So again, that was the second thing where things just happen how they're meant to be in life. While I'm going to college, and while I had at the University of Nevada, Reno, a scholarship now, you still need money to live on.
Right.
And that's when I took the job at Sparks Family Hospital.
Got it.
Surgery and recovery. Loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, and a few nice doctors there took me to their wings and took me to the OR. Him, this guy pushing people back and forth, and they let me go watch. So, and I was already in the science direction.
Yeah.
And so that's where the sights got set on medical school. I loved that job. My sciences applied. I'm now at the University of Nevada, which, by the way, has a medical school. I was like,
perfect.
Oh my gosh.
It lined up.
That was it.
Well, and I think that's awesome. You've got to try new things as a young person sometimes. And, you go out and try dentistry or being a hygienist, and you're like, ew, no, not even close. Right. But then you move over just a little bit to the medical, in a different area of the medical field, and you nail it.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That feeling of being able to go, this is what I want, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And I've never looked back, and I've loved every day of practicing medicine all the way up to this day since.
Well, I want to talk to you more about your time at medical school and kind of what that springboards you into, because that's the next thing. We're running out of time for episode 2 here, but let's roll that into episode 3.
Beautiful.
And
let's
focus on the meds, because I am really excited I can just see your excitement sitting here with me right now. I can't wait to kind of get some more of that out of you with talking about your time at medical school. That's going to be great.
Can't wait to tell you about it.
Well, hey, here's our sign off, right? So remember last week we did a dream car.
Oh, yeah.
I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I told you before the show, what I want you to ask us, or what we want to try to answer, is choose one of the 3 least favorite subject to study in college. So go from Air Force Academy time to, before you get started at the University of Reno, what's your least favorite? Give us a choose 3 or one of 3.
Least favorite subject. Which of these did I dread going to? Number 1, let's say A again, organic chemistry.
Okay. Organic chemistry.
Number 2, or B, I'm sorry, English Lit.
English Lit, okay.
And choice C will be the history of nursing.
History of nursing, English Lit, organic chemistry.
Which one did I dislike the most?
So my guess, and then audience, of course, guess along with us, throw something in the comments, tell us what you think. I think that, I know organic chemistry is notoriously difficult class, but you strike me as somebody that likes the challenge. English Lit, I always thought it was interesting. It's a lot of reading and writing, but maybe you're not a lit guy. And then the final one is
history of nursing.
History of nursing. See, now I think that one sounds incredibly interesting. I'm going to go B, English Lit, as my guess. No spoilers.
Okay.
We'll get to it in episode 3. Folks, I'm going to guess English Lit as his least favorite to be a part of. But drop a comment down in the comments section. Tell us what you think. Dr. Ramos, another great show.
Oh, great time, brother.
I love doing this.
Enjoy the time. It flies by.
It does. I can't wait for next week.
Yeah, and we're about to get to some medical and legal topics, I hope soon.
That's right. Yeah. I want to do a good job making sure that people understand you as best as they can. Yeah. And this is a great starting point, right? Absolutely. Let's get to know you, and then, hey, who knows what sort of oddball stuff we'll get to have you break down in the future.
Well, thanks, man. Been great being with you.
You as well. And thank you for listening at home. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Dr. Lawyer Breakdown.